Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Sunday, October 12th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 80.5 degrees, with a low dipping to 58.7, so expect a pleasant fall day with mild evenings ahead. Coming up, we'll examine China's bold stance against President Trump's threat of 100% tariffs on their goods, and unpack the reasons behind the renewed flare-up in tensions over the South China Sea. Plus, other key stories on global trade impacts, regional security, and more. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, folks. We're kicking off today's top stories with the escalating trade tensions between the United States and China, where President Trump has threatened massive new tariffs, and Beijing is digging in its heels. Joining me to break this down is our White House correspondent, Ethan, who's got all the latest details from the Beltway. Ethan, what sparked this latest flare-up?
Thanks, Grace. It's like the trade talks are playing a high-stakes game of tariff tag, and nobody's yelling uncle. According to reporting from ABC News, drawing from Associated Press dispatches by Ken Moritsugu in Beijing, it all boils down to China's new export controls on rare earth minerals and magnets, announced on October 9th through their Ministry of Commerce Notice 2025 number 61. These are crucial elements, Grace. Think of them as the secret sauce in everything from your smartphone screen to fighter jet engines, vital for electronics, electric cars, and defense tech. China controls about 70% of global mining and 90% of processing, as CBS News and The Washington Post have analyzed, giving them real leverage.
Rare earths sound exotic, but they're everyday essentials. So how did Trump respond to these restrictions? And what's the timeline here?
Spot on, Grace. They're rare only in name, not in how much we rely on them. Trump fired back on October 10th via a Truth Social post, threatening to slap an additional 100% tariff on all Chinese imports, effective November 1st, which is just 20 days from now, or even sooner. This would stack on top of existing duties averaging around 30%, potentially hiking effective rates to about 130%. He called China's move, quote, extraordinarily aggressive, end quote, and very hostile, accusing them of holding the world captive with their monopoly, per his own words reported by Fox Business and CBS News.
That's a hefty hit to wallets worldwide. China's not backing down, though, right? What's their official word?
Absolutely no concessions in sight. In their first statement today, October 12th, China's Commerce Ministry rejected the threat outright, saying they don't seek a tariff war but are not afraid of one, according to ABC News and U.S. News and World Report. They urged dialogue over threats, warning that U.S. actions would prompt Beijing to take firm countermeasures to protect its interests. It's a tit-for-tat that's unraveling the fragile trade truce from earlier this year.
Remind us about that truce, Ethan. How did we get here from what seemed like progress?
Sure, for viewers unfamiliar, a truce is like a temporary ceasefire in trade battles. It started with a joint statement after Geneva talks in May, pausing hikes for 90 days, then a framework in London in June, as NPR, OPB.org, and citynews.ca have detailed. Tariffs dropped from peaks of 145% U.S. on China and 125% the other way in April, down to 30% and 10% respectively. Trump touted China's pledge for full access to magnets and rare earths in exchange for things like letting more Chinese students into U.S. universities. But it was more handshake than ironclad deal per The Hindu, Dawn.com, and LiveMint, leaving room for these new moves.
And both sides are pointing fingers at violations. What specific U.S. actions ticked off China?
Exactly. It's a blame game with real economic stakes. China accuses the U.S. of breaching the spirit through expanded export controls on Chinese firms in AI, semiconductors, and robotics, adding subsidiaries to the entity list, as a House Select Committee urged on October 9th. Plus, new U.S. port fees starting October 14th, $50 per net ton on Chinese ships, probing subsidies, which China called double standards and hit back with their own fees on U.S. vessels mid-October, according to Port Technology International, Lloyd's List, and Supply Chain Dive.
With tariffs under 130% looming, what's the legal backbone for this, and what could it mean bigger picture?
Legally, it's drawing from Trump's playbook since his second term began January 20th. Likely the International Emergency Economic Powers Act for security threats, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act for national security imports, or Section 301 for unfair practices, as Congress.gov, Mayor Brown, and the Peterson Institute for International Economics outline. No formal notice yet by today, per Economic Times and Wiley Rain. Economically, it's rattling markets. Wall Street's worst day since April with Nasdaq and S&P drops amid recession jitters from Seeking Alpha, India Times, and Investing.com. It could derail green energy pushes and spike costs for tech and defense, as CSIS and Chatham House note. Plus, that Trump-Xi meeting at APEC in South Korea later this month might be off, with no reason left for talks, per onenews.co.nz, TRT World, and Channel News Asia.
Heavy stuff, Ethan, like a trade war that's anything but rare. Thanks for unpacking this complex clash.
My pleasure, Grace.
And that wraps our first story of two this morning. Stay tuned. And now for our second story this morning. Tensions are boiling over in the South China Sea, where a Chinese Coast Guard vessel has rammed a Philippine fishery ship near a disputed island. Joining me to unpack this latest clash is our international correspondent, Chloe. Chloe, what can you tell us about what happened today?
Good morning, Grace. According to detailed reporting from ABC News, drawing on Associated Press accounts by Jim Gomez in Manila and Ken Moritsugu in Beijing, the incident unfolded around 9:15 a.m. local time near Thitu Island, which Filipinos call Pagasa Island. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel, identified by bow number 21559, fired a powerful water cannon at the anchored Philippine government fisheries vessel BRP Datu Pagbuaya, soaking its deck and even drenching two displayed Philippine flags. Just 3 minutes later, it rammed the stern, causing minor structural damage but no injuries to the 10-person crew.
That sounds like a high-pressure situation, literally with that water cannon. For viewers unfamiliar with the area, can you explain why Thitu Island is so contentious?
Absolutely, Grace. Thitu Island is the largest of 9 features occupied by the Philippines in the Spratly Archipelago, a hotspot in the South China Sea where multiple nations stake claims. It's home to a Philippine military garrison and about 200 civilians, mostly fisherfolk. The BRP Datu Pagbuaya, operated by the Philippines Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, was there with 2 other ships to provide logistical support and protection for Filipino fishermen. This region is vital, Grace, as it's a global trade route handling over $3 trillion in annual commerce and rich in fisheries and potential energy resources.
And the location is just over 12 miles from a Chinese base?
Exactly. About 20 kilometers from China's militarized artificial island at Subi Reef. Video footage released by the Philippine Coast Guard, as cited in ABC News and corroborated by The Independent from the UK, shows the Philippine vessel stationary and anchored off Thitu Island's eastern side near Sandy Cay, known as Tiaxian Reef in China. The Philippine Coast Guard described the Chinese maneuvers as dangerous and provocative, involving suspected maritime militia vessels too.
How has the Philippines responded to this ramming, which seems like bullying on the high seas?
The Philippine government condemned it as bullying tactics and aggressive actions. PCG spokesperson Commodore J. Tariella, quoted in ABC News, The Independent, and the Tri-City Record reprinting AP Wire, said such aggression won't make Manila surrender a square inch of territory. PCG Commandant Admiral Ronnie Gil Gavan added that it only strengthens our resolve, aligning with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s policy of defending territorial integrity. Filipino fisherfolk rely on these waters for livelihoods, so they're not backing down from water cannons or rammings.
What's China's side of the story, Chloe?
From Beijing, CCG spokesperson Liu Dejun, as reported by ABC News and the Tri-City Record via AP, accused the Philippine vessels of illegally entering Chinese waters near Sandy Cay without permission and ignoring warnings. They claimed a BFAR ship approached dangerously, leading to a scrape, and that China took lawful control measures to drive them away. This ties into China's 9-line claims over nearly the entire South China Sea, rejected by the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling under UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Speaking of that ruling, remind us how it affects places like Thitu and Sandy Cay.
Sure, Grace. Analyses from Inquirer.net, PCAcases.com, and CSIS.org explain that Thitu is a rock with a 12 nautical mile territorial sea, but no exclusive economic zone. Sandy Cay is a high tide elevation, also generating a 12 nautical mile sea that overlaps with Thitus, creating a disputed zone. Sabaya Reef is a low tide elevation, ineligible for zones until China artificially enhanced it with runways and missiles. The PCA affirmed Philippine rights, but didn't resolve feature sovereignty, so this incident likely happened in that overlap, inside Thitus claimed waters, but contested by China.
This isn't the first time, right? How does today's event fit into the pattern?
It's part of over 100 aggressive incidents since the PCA ruling, per USNI News, The Diplomat, and lawfare.org. Tactics have escalated from shadowing to rammings and water cannons. For example, in June 2024 at Second Thomas Shoal, Chinese personnel boarded Philippine boats, injuring crew and seizing rifles, as reported by AP News and Philstar.com. March 2024 saw a collision injuring 4 Filipinos, covered by ABS-CBN News and The Guardian. August incidents at Escota Shoal included hull punctures, detailed in Arab News and Straits Times. Even in August 2025, at Scarborough Shoal, a Chinese warship accidentally hit its own vessel, noted by USNI.org. Around Thitu, it's about blocking fisherfolk support, extending coercion across the Spratlys, where China has fortified 7 reefs.
And the international reaction?
The United States condemned China's actions via the State Department, reaffirming the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty as per ABC News, The Independent, and WKYC.com. Ambassador Mary Kay Carlson praised the Filipino crew's valor. Japan, Australia, the EU, and Canada backed the PCA ruling per Ground News and The Diplomat. This could lead to protests, ASEAN talks, or joint patrols like Balikatan, though no sanctions yet. With OSINT from marine traffic or Planet Labs still emerging, the PCG video is key evidence, monitored by AP News, Philstar.com, and AZAT.tv.
Chloe, you've navigated these details masterfully. Thank you for breaking down this sea of tensions. Here are some other headlines. Overnight on the Afghan-Pakistan frontier, claims and counterclaims crossed the line like tracer fire. Afghanistan's Taliban government says its forces killed 58 Pakistani soldiers, wounded 30, and seized 25 posts in retaliatory and successful operations after alleged Pakistani airstrikes in Kabul and Paktika earlier in the week. Pakistan disputes the figures, calling the assaults unprovoked, and says its troops captured 19 Afghan positions while inflicting casualties of their own. Afghan officials report 9 of their soldiers killed. The barrage brought relations to a new low since 2021, with the immediate spark said to be an October 9th strike aimed at the TTP's leader, unconfirmed by Islamabad. Major crossings at Torkham and Chaman are shut, freezing trade and travel, while Qatar and Saudi Arabia helped broker a halt around midnight, urging restraint. In Tennessee, a blast at the Accurate Energetic Systems plant in rural Humphreys County left no room for doubt or survivors. Authorities confirm 16 people were killed when an explosion at 7:45 a.m. Friday leveled at least one building and threw debris hundreds of yards. The factory develops explosives for military and commercial use, including Defense Department contracts. Volatile materials have slowed the grim search, and a cause remains under wraps. The ATF and FBI are leading a meticulous probe expected to last days, if not weeks. Cameroon heads to the polls. At 92, President Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state, seeks an eighth term that could extend a 43-year run. More than 8 million registered voters are casting ballots at over 31,000 polling stations, with voting due to close at 6 p.m. local time and results expected within 15 days. The single-round simple majority system favors the incumbent, while opposition figures Issa Chiroma Bakari and Bello Buba Maigari face headwinds. Voters cite rising prices, a grinding Anglophone conflict, and youth unemployment. The nation hopes the next chapter won't read like a rerun. In New Orleans, Helena Moreno has jazzed her way to City Hall, winning 55% in the October 11th primary and dodging a runoff against State Senator Royce Duplessis and Councilmember Oliver Thomas. She will be the city's first Hispanic mayor and its second woman to hold the post, succeeding the term-limited and federally indicted LaToya Cantrell. Moreno takes office in January, touting a set list of priorities: public safety, repairing aging infrastructure, and boosting local businesses. She says the early win lets her start assembling a team and tune the city budget from her current council seat. And in Mississippi, a string of homecoming celebrations turned heartbreak. 6 people were killed and at least 16 wounded when gunfire erupted on Main Street in Leland. 4 victims died on scene, 2 later at a hospital. 2 more were killed on the Heidelberg High School campus, and additional injuries were reported in Rolling Fork. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is assisting. A person of interest is identified in Heidelberg, while suspects remain at large in Leland. Leaders call it senseless. Communities demand sense and safety. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.